Next is the Grand Rapids Public Museum River Edge Design. Andy, I think Andy's going to take us through this.
I think you're on. Sorry, Andy, I think you're on mute.
I think we'd have that figured out by now. Good morning, everybody. We've made it to page 103 in your packet. So thanks for hanging with us. In the interest of time, I'm just going to offer a few words of context and then throw it over to Dale Robertson, who is a tremendous champion for the Grand Rapids Public Museum, its vision for the future, and of course, the Grand River Revitalization Project as a whole. So just a little bit of context. You all will recall we did a little plan called GR Forward, and the first goal of that was to reestablish the Grand River as the draw and build out a riverfront park system. Within that, we identified more than 24 what we call opportunity sites along the river, where we have opportunities to increase public access to the waterway, add new amenities, build out a trail system, and generally connect the river corridor and a green ribbon, basically from Riverside Park to Millennium Park, over about 9.5 or so miles. Within that plan, the Grand Rapids Public Museum site was identified as a priority site. Was ranked among, I think, maybe 10 or so priority sites at the time, where we have an opportunity to do all of those community goals. And I think importantly, and Dale will talk about this in a minute, the museum site also provides some special opportunities, particularly as it relates to culture and education with their partnership with Grand Rapids Public Schools and other things that they do in that facility. So the museum has been doing quite a bit of planning over the last year or two, and we invited Dale here to give us an update on that process, and I'll throw it over to him. And then when he's done, we'll also have a request to help support some additional design work to get the River Edge project basically shovel ready throughout this year. So that's the context, and Dale, I'll throw it over to you.
All right, thank you, Andy. Thank you, members of the board. It's Dale Robertson with the Grand Rapids Public Museum. I very much appreciate having some time this morning. Yes, we're here to be part of the formal request for some support that would allow us then to truly be shovel ready to complete some engineering and schematic designs. I'd like to first compliment our owners, the City of Grand Rapids. Although we're no longer a city department and have separate management, we're still part of the family. We're still owned by the city, and so we cooperate and work with them. And the city has been very gracious in agreeing to hold all the paper and to really lead and be in charge of the entire construction bid process and evaluation all the way through. And so the rendering you're seeing here, which is boy, we just got done talking about art, and this is a beautiful piece of art in my estimation, because this is the 2B of what the Grand Rapids Public Museum would be if the entire expansion plan were to go through. It was created by the architect that won that bid through the city, which is Tower Pinkster, and it has trail systems and access to the river, and will allow particular access to a wave feature that's going to be right in front of the Grand Rapids Public Museum. So an overall goal, being that we are a public entity, is that we be as public, if not more public than we've ever been, and it truly be a community gathering place where people can stay and come and enjoy, whether we're open or not. And so what I'd like to do is allow my colleague, Dr. Stephanie Ogren, to go through just a quick, I know you've had a lot of presentations today, but a quick presentation on the river edge, the riverfront design. There's other components too to this major expansion, but this is the one that is directly related to most directly related to the rapids. The return of the rapids, and are part of our GR Forward Master Plan. The other thing that I think, if you allow me just a minute to brag, you know I'm not from here, so I don't have any of the West Michigan humility, is that the other part of the driving the expansion for the public museum is simply just use. When I took this job in 2008, we had 68,000 visitors. 2019, before COVID, we had 259,000 visitors. We have 30,000 school visits, student visits, but that was capped because we're just out of room. And this expansion will ideally allow us to double that to 60,000. So the river edge is a really important piece because it's a key to how we do our science and education and watershed and water ecology programming, and that's Stephanie Ogren's wheelhouse. So with that, Dr. Ogren, I believe you're on here somewhere, and take it away.
Thanks, Dale. Andy, can we, next slide, can we go through these? Perfect, thank you. And I will try to just run through these quickly, but I do want to show you some of the conceptual drawings that Tower Pinkster has come up with. And just to put this in context, we are working through the museum's strategic plan. So we're looking at the redesign and community engagement. So really how the museum can be that hub of community engagement on the west side that focuses on science, history, and culture. Next slide. As Dale mentioned, pre-COVID, we had almost 260,000 visitors. 30,000 of those were students. We did learn a lot through COVID, but we've been working on this design throughout COVID and really thinking about our digital infrastructure, but also how we use our space. And so how we can make the museum accessible from the outdoors, and that riverfront design really allows us to expand our reach and become that community asset. Next slide. So we are part of the GR Forward Master Plan. We are also part of the River for All planning process. So as we worked with Tower Pinkster and our design team, as well as with the community, we really took all of those suggestions and recommendations into account and tried to create a design that really highlights all of the best pieces of those plans right at the museum site. Next slide. This is part of a larger design process. So this is a layout of the museum, and just for context, the river would be at the bottom of the screen, the round portion's the carousel. To the left is our south. That would be an addition that we would propose. On the west side of the building, we would have a new group entrance, and then on the north side, we're reconfiguring our retail and access. All of those really have been driven by this bigger idea for riverfront access. So though we're looking at riverfront access today, it is part of a much larger and comprehensive redesign of the museum and the museum experience. So that really becomes a place of learning in the 21st century. Next slide. So if we think about the riverfront specifically, when we talked with the designers and the community, we really wanted to think about creating a space that could host all of the programs that the community is asking us to host right now. Oftentimes, next slide please, we end up doing many of our riverfront programmings on our neighbors' properties. So we're often at an Ogren Park or at Grand Valley or across the river. You'll see that's some of our summer science students. And we actually access the river from across the Blue Bridge, so you can see the museum in the background, because we just don't have an accessible site. Next slide. So this is what we look like today. Many of you are familiar with that. And then as Dale showed, the next slide really shows the vision for the future. So we have fully accessible trails. All of these were designed with universal design principles in mind. They are of low grade, so they are fully accessible for all mobility types. And you'll see that they connect really nicely with the Ogren Park to the north, as well as Grand Valley State University to the south, and really help complete that loop for that trail system. Next slide. So if we start at Pearl and Front Street, the redesign really takes into account creating a West Side campus. So it has that look and feel of a Ogren Park and the Ford Museum, and connects really well with our neighbors. If we start to walk around the building, next slide, please, you'll notice there's some terracing. So this would be the tunnel from an Ogren Park over to the museum campus. And we start to have these terraces where people can gather adjacent to that wave feature that is planned to be on the north side of our property. And then we have these fully universally designed trails that go up towards the museum or down towards the river for accessibility, no matter the height and the flow of the river. Next slide. These terraces would allow for community gathering. Right now, you know, the conceptual images show rocks, but I always like to say this really would become an artifact garden. So we could have dugout canoes or historical replicas of furniture from Berkey and Gay, but ways that we can continue to tell the story of West Michigan just by having people be on our property. Next slide. As you walk towards the carousel or wheel towards the carousel, you would be on a ramp system that would allow you full access to that community asset. Next slide. And you'll notice a change in the carousel. So currently you have to go out and around the carousel, and there's a series of steps in the system. And so this would really truly conform to that River for All design and allow for this nice open pathway. It also allows for the carousel to be open to the public when the museum's not necessarily open. So it would have its own separate entrance. And then next slide. If you were looking back at the carousel, we also, because it is West Michigan, it's cold and rainy and snowy sometimes. So we've been thinking about snow melt as well as louvers for weather protection. But the fact that this would allow the carousel to be an accessible asset and be open to the public when the museum's not is really important. And in the next slide, you could show how we also will be redesigning the inside of the carousel as a separate part of the project so that it is an accessible asset where everything is a ramped system. Next slide. On the south side of the carousel, we've created some nice seating areas that overlook the Blue Bridge. These would be great for educational programming and community programming. It's a lot quieter on this side. It's blocked from the highway noise. And so we could see this area being utilized quite a bit for school groups. Next slide. And then this would continue this trail system that would connect with Grand Valley and allow that ramped access up and down the river corridor. And then once we move forward with our South Tower expansion, it would also connect with a ground floor cafe that the museum is planning. And so we're really excited about the opportunities for this. This is the plan view of how the Riverfront redesign ties in with all of the other projects. And then I would just leave you with the final slide, which is my favorite view, looking from the river up towards the museum and showing those accessible walkways and trail systems that this portion of the design would cover. Dale?
So that's it. Well, happy to answer any questions and very much appreciate your consideration of some matching dollars to support so we can also be shovel ready, and maybe we can also be, if we can raise some of the additional dollars, we could join the Lions Square folks and both be working at the same time. And maybe that spurs the rest of the permitting for the other parts of the river restoration.
All right, nice presentation. Any questions?
Monitoring the chat there, it looks like you did get a red-winged blackbird question.
We were just talking about that yesterday. I think that should be a design challenge for the museum school students to figure out how to ecologically make that situation go away.
Mr. Chair, maybe just to detail the specific request here. The request is to support the museum with an amount not to exceed $253,625, which would be combined with some other funds to advance the river edge concepts into final designs and construction documents, and as Dale mentioned, get the project shovel ready. We had the Goal One group out on the site the other day, and one thing we talked about was a comment that actually Daniel Tillelian left us with when he was here from River LA, and he kind of expressed the importance of setting the tone with early projects. And as we think about the museum site being one of the first major opportunities sites to move forward, this is a really exciting vision that I think does get at that idea of setting the tone for the level of access, the trail connectivity, and the other community goals that we're after at the river's edge. So a good project to lead forward here, and comes with a strong staff recommendation.
And Andy, if I could make a comment, if you wouldn't mind, I appreciate very much being part of all those sessions that DGRI and the DDA organize. And I found Daniel to be particularly inspiring and frankly influential in this. He challenged us to be bold and set a tone, and those words rang through this entire time that we were going through this. So, thanks to DGRI for bringing him to town. He shared examples of what they've done out west, and I hope maybe you can see a little bit of that that inspiration that he brought to this process through you in this entire design.
So Andy, just a quick question, or Dale, when you say shovel ready, what's your timing on actually shovel in the ground?
So the timing really rests on two things. One is raising the additional dollars that we would need for this. So this portion of the project for the river's edge here is about $7 million. We were part of a earmark request that went in through the city. We were one shy with Congressman Meyer, but we're not giving up, and we'll continue to pursue that and hoping for additional bites of the apple and other sorts. So if we can raise $7 million and then get the permits, and the permits, as I understand, that we should need will be very similar to what was needed for Anabawan Park. As soon as we can get that done, then with these engineering and schematics that you would be approving ideally for today, we would be ready to go at that point. So it's those two things.
Member Eddie, do you have a comment? I think you're on mute still.
There we go. I was wanted to say that I love the concept. I love the ideas here. This museum has been a tremendous blessing for my family and I during COVID, as a place that we were able to go, even with the mask. We were able to go there as a family, as well as take advantage of the membership benefit of going to other museums, such as COSI in Columbus, Ohio. And so many people around the city know that I've been kind of quietly pushing for, more science and industry type of museum here. And I know we have a lot of those components right here in this building and in this project. And so again, I just wanted to share that and say thank you for all that this museum has been for years for members of the community, as well as those who come to visit our wonderful city.
Thanks, Jamel.
Yeah.
Any other comments? It's an exciting project. Now it can be a contest of who goes first, Lions Square or the museum. So I'm raising the flag.
I love it. We see each other right across the river.
Exactly.
If I could, Mr. Chair, if I could respond to Mail, it's thank you for your comments on this. And let me violate West Michigan rules and brag on Stephanie. She is an aquatic biologist and an ecological restorationist by training, has her PhD. So I guarantee you, we are just getting started again on the science. In fact, we've now got a geologist on our staff too. So all the minerals and all of the science specimens that were highlighted in the old building are going to be coming back out and shared more and more and more. So we're really just ginning up to where we used to be, and we'll surpass where we were on science. But to bake into humanities and culture, right? Because all of that informs how we interpret and make sense of the scientific work. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. We're just getting going here.
Thank you. All right. If there are no other comments, I would need to entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McNeely.
This is Kate. I second that motion.
Thank you, Cam. Any other comments? If there are none, is there anyone on the board that would like to vote no or abstain from this motion? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Exciting project. Look forward to it.